6010. And there'll be people to help you. Again, it's either for yourself or a couple you know need help.
Yeah.
Recommend it to them or buy a ticket for them. Or you are a counselor or you are counseling people. Encourage them to come on. And let's build a community of people who have that aspect of our lives right. Kojo, this morning I'm going to present something that if it doesn't bring me trouble, I don't know what else will bring me trouble.
Oh, wow.
But so here we go. In my food for thought presentation last week, I reflected on the trial of Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, the murderer of George Floyd. I ended my presentation by asking 3 questions. I asked, what at all have blacks done to the whites for them to act as if they forget that we are also human? I also asked, why do whites need being reminded that black lives matter? And finally, I asked, when will the black skin not be a death sentence in the USA? This morning, I am going to attempt to answer at least one of these questions. The practice of whites treating blacks as non-human or subhuman goes back a long way. This morning, I'm going to focus on just one small part of that long and heartbreaking and unfortunate history. Kojo, between 1885 and 1908, a period of 23 years, the King of Belgium, Leopold II, declared Congo Free State, later to be renamed Zaire. Kojo, a territory that was over 905,000 square miles, or 2.34 million square kilometers, as his personal property, and unleashed on the people of Congo such inhumane treatment that the international community that were also exploiting Africa could not accept it and forced him to surrender his claim to that vast territory. Can you imagine? They were all chopping from Africa. They were all exploiting Africa.
Yes.
But the reports of what this guy was doing was so bad that they all said, no.
Fellow exploiters said,
No. You asked for this one, David.
Wow.
And they forced him to give it up after 23 years. Unfortunately, by the time the international community forced him to give it up, it is estimated that he had killed, in fact, it is in the report by the Belgian government, that he had killed half of the population.
Jesus.
Estimated at over 10 million people, just to satisfy his greed. Indeed, the reports would claim, some reports that I've seen cited say that they regard that as the first genocide in history. His atrocities were brought to the attention of the world by such authors as Joseph Conrad in his book Heart of Darkness, and by Sir Roger Casement in his book and report The Eyes of Another Race, Roger Casement's Congo Report, and 1903 diary. The spotlight was also shown on the atrocities by the author Arthur Conan Doyle, whose book, The Crime of the Congo, became bestseller in the early 1900s. To control the territory and oppress the people for the purpose of getting as much rubber from the territory as possible, King Leopold created a private army called Force Publique, and the soldiers were empowered to do whatever they liked to ensure that rubber quotas were met. When a village failed to meet the unreasonably high quota, the hands of the children were cut off, were severed. And the men and women were killed and hanged. They killed them and hanged them. And the whole village burnt to the ground. And the soldiers were required to bring the severed human hands to justify every bullet they have shot. Yes. And sometimes they will gather these and roast them and put them in baskets and go and deliver it to their commanders. So I fired, let's say, 50 rounds. Here are 50 severed hands. To control, a Danish missionary witnessed some of these atrocities. In one incident, he witnessed a Belgian police officer, a Belgian soldier, kill over 120 Congolese, just for the fun of it. In that, when the soldier saw how disgusted the missionary was, that's what he told him. Oh, don't take this to heart so much. The commissioner has promised that if we have plenty of severed hands, he will shorten our service. Hey. So, in his diary, this is what the missionary wrote. Quote, I'm quoting. The baskets of severed hands set down at the feet of the European commanders became the symbol of the Congo Free State. The collection of severed hands became an end in itself. Forced public soldiers brought them to the stations in place of rubber. They even went out to harvest them instead of rubber. They became a sort of currency. They came to be used to make up for shortfalls in the rubber quotas. And the forced public soldiers were paid their bonuses on the basis of how many hands they collected. And the atrocities of King Leopold II in the Congo Free State is just one small chapter in the history and record of how little black lives matter to whites. And so the question, what at all have blacks done to whites for them to act as if they forget that we are also human, is relevant and needs to be answered. Bakojo, on second thought, I believe that the question itself is wrong. I believe the right question should be, what at all have blacks done to themselves, to ourselves, for the whites to act as if they forget that we are also human? I believe that if even one African country becomes successful and prosperous, if even one African country demonstrates that blacks, like Kwame Nkrumah said, can handle their own affairs competently and efficiently and effectively, then I believe the rest of the world will sit up and take notice. And that will be the turning point in the heartbreaking relationships between whites and blacks. Let one African country overcome corruption and incompetence in government. Let one African nation learn to make the most of its resources for the good of its citizens. Let one African nation refuse to become a beggar nation. And I believe the world will recognize that after all, the black man is also deserving of respect and dignity. Until we get to that place and time when black people are not seeking to run away from their countries to go and sell their souls in the white man's land, until then, we cannot expect equal treatment from the whites. Kojo, I am reading Cicely Tyson's autobiography with the title, Just As I Am. And in the very first chapter of the book, she narrates an incident that occurred when she was on the road promoting a film in which she played a character called Rebecca, her first lead role in a major film. The title of the film was Sounder. In the course of traveling around the U.S. promoting the film, she came to Philadelphia. At a meeting with the media, a Caucasian reporter took the mic and said, I have a confession to make. He said, I never thought of myself as being the least bit prejudiced, but as I watched the film, I just could not believe that the son of a black man was calling his father daddy. That is what my son calls me. This is said in public. I could not believe. He said, I'm watching a film with a black family, involving, there's a black family on the screen. And the son of that black man calls his father daddy. The same title my son calls me. He said, I couldn't accept that. The white pressman could not accept the fact that a black man, a black father, could have the same loving relationship with his son as he, the reporter, had with his son. I remember that when I first read that incident in the book, I shivered. It sent cold chills down my spine. I felt as if I had been slapped. But I believe that we cannot blame the whites for their prejudice. I believe that if every one of us, blacks, lived a better version of ourselves, no white man will be shocked and upset to hear a black boy call his father daddy. The challenge is not for the whites to turn away from their prejudice. The challenge is for us, the blacks, to demonstrate beyond any doubt that we are not inferior to them. Fact is, even blacks treat other blacks with contempt when they think they are failures and beggars. Kojo, we saw this when Ghanaians fled to Nigeria seeking economic refuge. We know of the Omo Ghana Go Home chant. We know of the Ghana Must Go chorus, and how some of our brothers and sisters were maltreated in a sister country because we had lost their respect because we were messing our affairs up. We also saw what happened in South Africa when the blacks there turned on other Africans because they perceived them as losers and people whose countries were broken in South Africa. The point I'm making is that you do not have to be a white man to have contempt for anyone who has failed to make the most of his opportunities and of his resources and with his life. Tell me, if there is a household in your neighborhood that cannot feed itself, and you find the children of that household always running to your house begging for food, how much respect would you have for them and the rest of their household? Africa needs a success story. Africa needs one country that manages to feed its citizens and give them so much hope that they do not risk their lives to escape the poverty and mismanagement of their countries. Africa needs one country that provides opportunities for its youth. And trust me, the rest of the world will give us the respect we are due. Until then, Kojo, I'm afraid we'll continue to live in a world where being black is regarded as second class in some circles.
So much I want to say, but we don't have time. Especially about that Cicely Tyson story.
Yeah.
That was 1972.
Yes.
Sounder, 72.
Yes.
As recently as 72.
Yes.
That's how some white people
Yes.
thought of black people.
He was shocked
We have to
and
talk
upset.
more. We have to talk more about this when we have the opportunity. Right now, though, Uncle Abel White will return on Thursday with even more food for thought. It's time for the